I'm fortunate enough today to have somebody who does not hail from the marketing side, and pretty excited to talk with Riaz Raihan, who is president of Alida and leads their technology and engineering work. Riaz, first, thanks for doing this.
Thank you, Mike. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
So, in our pre-work leading up to this, we talked a lot about AI, its potential, its dangers, to an extent. But since that's something that you have, I would say, a pretty good handle on, I'm excited to just hear your thoughts on, and if it's not giving away the secret sauce, how Alida is deploying AI, maybe what you expect to be doing with it in the near future. But let's just open it up. So how is Alida using AI right now to better connect with or understand customers?
Yeah, so Mike, AI has very broad applicability in the CX realm, right? And for a number of reasons. The big reason being CX is all about multiple touch points between customers and a company that's serving them. And those touch points can run into millions or tens of millions per day. So there's a lot of volume. And that's where AI comes in. AI is best suited for doing repetitive tasks at scale that humans would find extremely tedious, right? However, AI should never be, in my opinion, should never be the ethical judge of how to use something. Humans should always do that. Because at the end of the day, AI is a tool. So if I were to give you an example of how we use AI, we help our clients, which tend to be largely Fortune 5000 or Fortune 500 companies, we help them manage their customer experiences and get the voice of their customer. And this means helping them navigate and capture tens of millions of pieces of feedback every day. And we use AI for the routine, mundane, automatable tasks of capturing that information, organizing it, and making it consumable. So eventually a human being with ethics and a sense of morality can make a judgment on how to use that information.
So, in fact, coincidentally, just yesterday we published a short piece that mentioned a quote from Microsoft, and it went something like this: that they predict that by 2025, 95% of customer interactions will be AI informed, I think is the word they used. And it was interesting. The feedback that we got almost immediately was that's going to put a lot of people out of business. And I was quick to say, I don't think so. I think it's going to help a lot of people do a better job in their businesses. At least in that realm, I don't see AI really displacing anybody. Do you?
I don't. I think one of the biggest dangers of AI is the lack of understanding around it. I think people automatically jump from automation to unemployment. And while that seems like a logical leap of faith, it's not necessarily true. Let me use an analogy. Back in the 80s, when PCs were just making an appearance, people felt that it could destroy the jobs of typists and other office workers. None of that happened. Today, a PC is fundamental. People still have jobs in a variety of ways. And as a matter of fact, the PC has unleashed a lot more types of jobs that could not have happened. This interview could not have happened in the 80s because, you're looking at me, I'm looking at you, we're sitting in different cities. So AI is the same way. It's going to unleash new sources of value, many which we know of, and many, even more, that we don't know of because we haven't understood how it can be used. And I think there's a lot of tasks that are automatable, if that's a word, that AI can and should do, but I think the human factor is always going to be important. So I agree with you. I think AI is going to make work more enriched and more interesting and take away the tedious tasks. However, the human being will always be required to make intelligent, business-based, logical decisions.
So that touches on a topic that we're pretty passionate about. I am personally, and it sounds like you are as well. Which let's just call it ethics and data ethics in AI specifically. It's such a big topic, and AI's utility is exploding globally. I mean, it was one thing 3 or 4 years ago. It was a novel idea, but 360 degrees within marketing technology, it's being deployed somehow, somewhere. But I think you're right. There has to be a human or several humans behind it, guiding its learning abilities. How do we, if there even is an answer to this, create ethical, let's not say guidelines, but maybe standards for the use of AI and machine learning and new coming technologies that really have the ability to disrupt? Because as we've seen in several studies now, that AI can have a cognitive bias depending on who programs it. So how do you handle those things? How do you navigate that?
Good point. I'm an engineer. I code all the time, and the cognitive bias part is true. We see it. We see evidence of that across the industry. So I think there's two elements to this. One is a very tactical, obvious element, and one is a little more ethereal. Let me deal with the first. I think it comes down to one word: consent. Consent from people, and consent which is explicit, not implicit. You can't say, oh, it was buried in line number 162 of that very long form that you scroll down and press OK to. You essentially sign away all rights to your data. That's what I call fake consent, because you're kind of burying it somewhere where you know it may not be in the face of somebody. When someone makes a decision, for example, I made the decision today to speak with you. That was explicit. And we made the decision to record this interview. That was explicit. That is what I mean by explicit consent. Consent that the consumer knows they are giving consciously. And then whatever they give you, they have to understand and we have to agree that whatever purpose the data is being collected for, it'll be used for that purpose and not for many other purposes, right? So consent is number one. Now let's talk about the slightly more ethereal part, which is the framework. For me, the framework is important because today, every device, whether it's a watch, whether it's your cell phone, whether it's your PC, any kind of software that you touch is collecting data about you. The question is, can we have a framework? Can we all agree that there has to be some guidelines on how the data is used? In the industry these days, people say, when a service is free, remember, you are the product.
Right. You no longer are the customer. You are the product.
And that is a dangerous thing, right? I think that's what we have to come away from and agree that people are participants. They're not necessarily products to constantly be sold to. And it gets a little bit annoying as well, right? So there's actually a blowback, a pushback if you overdo this targeted marketing and social stalking.
And those thresholds tend to change. They're fluid.
That's exactly right. So I think you need both, but it comes down to those two things: a framework for the long term, but I think explicit consent is very important.
So this is a very interesting time to be dealing with this. I'm sure you're aware of all this as I am, but between GDPR and CCPA and the various other legislative actions that are out there trying to get a handle on this, it seems to me like the legislatures know they have a problem on their hands. They know they need to deal with this, but I feel like they're dealing with it in the age of brick phones, where, hey, look, these neat little buttons will let me talk to somebody that I can't see right here. But with the advent of AI, everything is accelerated to the point where I don't think regulations are really even, at least the regulations I'm aware of, are really even able to deal with the speed and breadth of personal data usage and what that could mean. I mean, everything just accelerated. We're at hyperspeed right now.
I agree. And I agree with the analogy, right? You can't use rules that were made for the railroads and apply them to air travel.
Right.
And just say they're both forms of travel. So your brick phone is a great analogy. Here's my view on this. The ultimate judge in all of this, in this game, is the customer, is the individual. Because they vote with their wallets. Companies that have a track record of protecting or being very reasonable and ethical about the use of customer data, I believe will prosper. Companies that choose to go the other way will be punished. They'll be punished with their stock going down. They'll be punished with people opting out of that service. They'll be punished in a variety of other ways. And I think that is punishment. And I think that is a far more effective way than just having legislative controls. You need the legislative controls, of course, but for all the reasons that you mentioned, those may not be completely effective. So coming back to what we do at Alida, one of the things we've decided is to be an empathetic company, right? That's one of our core values. So empathy means don't do to others what you would not like to have done to you, right? And deal with people's data and privacy in a respectful fashion. Our entire business is built around that. And guess what? Customers like it. When they work with us, they know that they can trust us, that the data will be secure, not be misused, not be packaged and sold. They are not the product. And instead, the product is the product, and they are just contributing to making the product better. I think that's a very important distinction that companies have to draw for themselves. And I don't think it's just about morality. I think it's about economic benefit and growth.
Completely agree.
And the customer will want.
Raihan, it is a pleasure. I wish that we had more time to talk because we're just getting started here, and this really is just the tip of the iceberg on a fascinating and important topic. But thank you for your time, and I'm looking forward to the next few times we get to do this.
Thank you, Mike.